If you're wondering, wow, that's not what I expected, like 2 seconds after I walked out here, I totally get it. In the upcoming minutes, I'm gonna let you soak up that feeling and hopefully shed some light onto how like the complicated and seemingly nuanced traits listed in the title of this talk. Amid all of that, I can be Muslim, stand here, and do all of those other things too. So, you know, I am terrified to be here right now. I mean, I'm thrilled, don't get me wrong, but terrified. And there are certain things that I cannot say or divulge because my literal life might be at stake. And I don't know if that's something that, you know, many of you can relate to or have felt at some point in your life, but, and I get that it sounds dramatic. It is a little dramatic. But when I started thinking about like writing my speech, at first I was like, yeah, I like being unapologetic. I've been through too many shitholes of my life to back out now. You know, I run an intersectional feminist magazine about millennial Muslim women. So, YOLO, I'll go out there, you can't stop me. I'll be who I am. And I remember sitting in my car, telling my 2 bisexual friends in the most casual way possible, like, hey guys, I know I just like left home 4 months ago after escaping a situation fraught with mental illnesses, paralysis, existentialism, possible arranged marriages, career prospects. But get this, I'm speaking at a conference for lesbians who tech. And their response was like a horrified look of concern. So for a second, I was genuinely baffled why they weren't excited for me. And one of them handed me literal pepper spray while whispering, Shanzay, this is a safety issue. Why aren't you scared about this? And then the crumbling reality of my circumstances hit me. It's actually terrifying. I froze for about 4 hours after that, just contemplating what the hell I was doing and in what social, cultural, and political climate. The immediate thought, one that many brown people can understand before diving into the heaping pile that is the rebellious immigrant experience, was, what if my parents or someone that knows my parents found out I was doing this and could see it? And like, I don't want the fear and paranoia of being found out keeping me from things that I do or things that I feel. But also, it'd be nice not to die. All right, well, I probably won't die, but I really don't want to find out what they would do. And that's just it. The stigmatization and need to keep things hushed is precisely the problem. That's why I worked for a website like muslimgirl.com. It's so easy to like be in the background and edit articles that come through talking about issues like being Muslim and gay, divorced, trans, mentally ill, in a war-torn nation, Black, Arab, struggling with faith. We cover everything, we cover it all. We make it a point to feature these narratives that make up a collective experience, fighting against the Western interpretation that groups us into neat little bundles of stereotypes. But it's so much harder to publicly come out and admit that on a stage in front of people when all your life you've been forced to internalize that it's wrong, disgusting, keep it silent, it's not your place. At the same time, though, I really don't like the idea of living a life that's dictated by other people. Whether it's my seemingly conservative parents, the Western media, or male-dominated spaces that invalidate my interests and contributions, I'm no longer about that life, fam. And I'm here anyway, because I refuse to let that happen to other girls like me. So, thank you. I really like space. I'm currently an astrophysics major at Rutgers. And here's where I diverge in terms of like what a lot of girls are encouraged to do and end up doing. So I've been obsessed with astronomy since I was like 10 years old. I'd hide away into the recesses of my library while other kids were actually out at recess. And it's followed me throughout my childhood, into my teens, and now into my adulthood. And I feel bad for my parents because they really, really wished it were a phase that ended a long time ago. So many of our talks start off with, but beta, that field has no scope. How will you make money with that job? Why are you wasting your youth chasing fantasies? They meant well because they just wanted what they thought was best for me. And having a 16-year-old saying, yeah, forget money, I want to sit in a room my whole life and discover the universe is a little bit unsettling for parents. Unfortunately for them, I'm also nothing if not persistent. As the title claims, I do in fact want to go to Mars. The phone calls and sad emojis I receive about that every day are not fun either. And the conversation's always, but Mom, it's the best and most logical step for humanity. I want to be leading the movement that plunges us into a realm of possibility like we've never seen before. And her response is, that's nice, beta, but why can't you keep your head here on Earth like everyone else? Crying face emoji, alien emoji. So I feel so bad for them, you guys. But I've gotten comments like that literally my entire life, and not even just from them. I graduated from my second IT school yesterday. And I swear it was a little more than a glorified boys club with some typing. My calculus classes at university are 80% cisgendered men, and the culture sets you up to feel intimidated, that you're out of place, that it's out of your element. And in my own culture, my parents would rather I do something less intense, which is code word for science-y, because they want me to preserve my youth by being a suitable marriage prospect instead. So I'm backed into many corners. The viewpoint is complicated, as all things are when dealing with varying identities and generational age gaps. I was born in Karachi. I lived there for 8 years before immigrating to the US. Nice! Someone from Karachi. What I do understand is that the hustle is hard for immigrant parents because they basically have to build a life out of nothing, with no familiarity with the language, the customs, the money. So that kind of places a weird expectation on their kids to make them proud. And it's so emotionally taxing to think about how everything they've ever done, you're disregarding it for your own selfish interests. But what do you do when those selfish interests are, for example, identifying as queer, going into a STEM field, wanting to not just be a pretty object to hand over to a dude to ogle at? So according to the parents, these interests would equate their hard work being paid off to things like job security, marrying into a stable and, in my case, culturally acceptable home, and not getting into funny business like hanging around the bad or weird people, which include but are not limited to gays, lesbians, existentialists, and potential philosophers that could potentially, challenge the status quo. So imagine my reaction when I realized after 16 years of being that good, obedient daughter, wow, I don't like the brown guys my mom is picking out for me. I might like this non-Pakistani guy, that's a problem. Wow, I might not even just only be into guys. I might never marry. I question facets of the version of my religion that were indoctrinated into me. I want to spend time discovering the universe and waste thousands of dollars on a PhD with no job scope. I love people who challenge authority. I like having rights and fighting systemic injustice and being loud and forcing my voice into spaces that are determined to silence me. And those realizations were then appropriately a giant, you get what I mean. But it's so much harder. It's so much harder because LGBTQA+ issues are just being accepted now in the mainstream. They're being acknowledged on a federal level and a legislative level, and within millennial spaces are generally seen as acceptable. But please realize that for communities like the ones that I belong to, for our parents, our aunts, and our family friends, they may as well be entirely separate worlds. Let me be clear here. This isn't an attempt to incite a sense of, oh, poor girl, look at how those people treat their children. Because it's easy to otherize Muslims and immigrants as these savage barbarians that oppress their daughters, Sharia law. You've seen the Facebook comments. on, certain presidential candidates. But what I say matters here, not just necessarily for good reason, but for an important reason nonetheless. My visibility as a Muslim woman on a public platform that talks about LGBTQ issues, as well as women in STEM, matter because it's extremely easy to be tokenized. And that doesn't mean I don't want to talk about it, because if I keep it silent, the stigma will continue, and intercommunity issues like that need to be highlighted. It's not an us versus them at all. Muslims are not a collective alien species that have customs that make no sense to us humans. We're not cheesy sci-fi tropes that y'all need to worry about invading your planet. We face so many of the same issues, the same struggles, which is a realization that admittedly was hard for even me to come to. I mean, we're trying really hard not to be killed on the subway by white people because some rando pseudo-supposed Muslim did something in the news that everyone jumped on and labeled as terrorist scum. But other than that, it's basically the same struggles. That being said, I am literally even worried about what I'm wearing right now and how in the Muslim community men are gonna yell haram at me before even listening to what I have to say. And I used to wish so hard to sometimes be the daughter of non-Muslim, non-brown parents. The things I felt, the things I was expected to do and didn't follow and felt the impending guilt for, that still tears me up. But it doesn't have to. I am literally allowed to feel these things and should be able to do it without fear, intrusive thoughts about my safety, and with confidence. Nowadays, I have a very whatever attitude towards everything. Muslim Girl helps with that. We have a staff of about 70 writers and editors who come from every corner of the globe and bring forward these perspectives on issues that people just aren't talking about. Conferences like these are an immensely informative thing for women who need that space. But there's something so incredible about the change that is happening here. The work that's being done, it's a movement that's taken hold and is forming on such a massive global scale. And tackling the issues like the ones that I just listed in informed, productive ways on platforms that recognize them and people who talk about them is very, very heartening to hear. So it shakes my enthusiasm up and reminds me that we may be hella slow as a species to understand ourselves, but the universe is a vast and daunting place. And if we're gonna all end in the inevitable decay that is entropy, we may as well try to place some meaning into the efforts of eliminating factors that make us so self-destructive. Thank you.